everyone, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. We're talking about the 22 forbidden off-grid tricks. So of course, you can tell by the title, I got these from an AI channel. And so for those who are new to my whole series on watching AI videos, so you don't have to, it's kind of a 2-3-fold purpose why I'm doing this. Part of it is to kind of buck the system and what's going on. You got these AI channels coming in, pushing out real life creators, and especially in the last few months, any channel that started, I mean, some of these are channels that have been around for a while that somehow suddenly changed, or they just were sat there and then suddenly became these AI, putting out all these AI videos in the last few months. And you learn to recognize it. And a lot of times the title and the thumbnail will tell, oh, it's got to be AI. So that's part of the reason. Also, because of the fact that it's like, hey, if they can steal my content and other real life content creators' content, because I've seen my clips in some of these videos. I've seen other channels' clips in some of these videos. They're real clips that the AI gathered and then stuck them in there. And so this is why I'm doing that, but also because it is kind of fun. You do get some interesting thoughts and ideas. And also the other reason, though, is I want to take some of this and put it in more down to earth, real life human being terms, because even though AI tends to rob the ideas from real people, not all of the ideas are the best for everyone, and some of them shouldn't even be practiced at all. But this one I thought was interesting, as there was a few things in here I had never heard of. And because of that, I did make it a point to look those up to make sure, okay, is this something real? I never heard of that. I think there was at least 2 of those. So I looked them up to make sure they were real before I put them in my list. And the funny thing was, it was originally 25. But of course, like AI does, it repeated a few of the things, which made it kind of funny. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this list. Most of this stuff you guys have heard of, but it's still things that are good to be reminded of. And I like kind of sharing, what I do in regards to some of this. So number 1 is, 1 through 3, points 1 through 3 were about water. So, having a well, having rainwater, or having, this is one of the ones I hadn't heard of, a spring box, which was rather interesting. So let me read. I wrote this really small in my terrible handwriting, though I tried to be neat. So basically, a spring box is when you, like, if you have a piece of property where you have a hillside, and then you go down to where the water is going to seep, and you dig that out, and you kind of build almost like an open cistern. And so the water will seep out into this open cistern. So in a way, it's kind of like a well, but not really. It's like you're making your own little reservoir by doing that. So spring box is what that was called. So I thought that was very interesting. For us, we do, we do have on our other 2 pieces of property, we do have creeks that go through them. But here on our little shy 1/3 acre property in a neighborhood, we can't have a well here, but we do have rainwater collection. So that's what we use. Now, as far as the forbidden part, in some states, in some places, yes, some of these things are considered illegal or forbidden. Not all of them, though. So I thought the title was a little clickbaity for the AI to say that, because not all of them are from, I don't know. Maybe some of them are in places that I don't know about, but there's a lot of this that I'm like, there's no way all these things are actually illegal or forbidden. So anyway, so that was 1 through 3. Number 4 would be an ice house. So an ice house, as most of you have probably heard of, is for keeping things cold. This was very common. You're getting ice blocks, cutting ice blocks out of a lake in the wintertime. And sometimes the ice house could be below ground. Sometimes it was above ground. They would cut out these big ice blocks and haul them back, put them in the ice house and stack them up. And between all the layers, they were either putting wood shavings or straw that would help insulate that. So the whole idea was to get the ice in the ice house to be able to last all through the summer to preserve their foods and keep them cold. So it was just a big refrigerator, basically, is what it was. And then usually by winter, that ice was pretty well melted, and then they would start all over again once the lakes froze over. Number 5 was a smokehouse for food preservation. Now, the funny thing about this, it is actually quite common. A lot of people around here either build or buy a smokehouse, and because where we live, salmon, steelhead, etc., these are common fish that a lot of people catch. And so a lot of people like to smoke them. And we don't have a smokehouse. I don't know why. I would really like for us to build one at some point, because it is actually a really great way to preserve meats. Aside from just drying meats, smoking was a really good way to preserve your meats, because of the way the smoke works, it helps to prevent and kill the bacteria that's going to cause decay. And plus it adds a really nice flavor. Like smoked salmon around here is so common to get, and it is really, really good. Okay, so number 6 is a cook stove. What we do have here is we have a wood stove. Again, I know a lot of you already know this, but we have a wood stove. We've had when we first bought this place, when we were getting married, there was a fireplace that had a wood stove insert. So we had that. But the problem with inserts is there's no stovetop area. Very few of them have any kind of, some of them might have a little shelf where you can put coffee or tea on to at least keep it warm, but you can't really cook on it. And eventually we decided to upgrade. And that was when we got the one we have now that has a nice big flat surface that I can stick big, huge pans on. And I love that. One thing about having a wood stove, whether it be the kind that I have that you can use for cooking, you can even get a stovetop oven to put on there. A wood stove of either kind, be it a cook stove or a freestanding, just regular heat the house wood stove, is still very, very multi-purpose, and which is why it makes it a great off-grid thing all the way around. Whether you want to live off-grid or you want to have a way to survive when the power goes out, it covers so many bases. That's why I love it so much. You use it to heat the house. You can use it to heat water for cleaning up with, whether it be yourself or your dishes. You can use it for dehydrating. You can use it for cooking. You can even use it for baking. You can use it for drying your laundry. And did I say dehydrating? Because, yeah, I did. Because Patrick made the little dehydrator racks that I can put on top of the wood stove for doing things like making beef jerky, or put next to the wood stove for drying herbs and the like. So that is why, to me, if you can afford it, getting a wood stove is a great, and you have the space and the ability and all that, it's a great place to start, just because it covers so many bases. It's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than putting in solar power. I'll tell you that for certain. Moving on from there, number 7 is a root cellar. So yeah, we've kind of thought maybe about putting a root cellar at our other piece. But the problem with a root cellar here is, because of the amount of rain we get, it's not the best. But it is a good common way people would use to keep it's called a root cellar because it's commonly used for root vegetables, like carrots, potatoes, but also things like apples, pears, and squash, but also canned goods or your ferments. Root cellars are great for this kind of thing. But you also have to consider your area. And, do you get 120 inches of annual average rainfall? It might not be the best thing to put in unless you have the right place to put it, where the ground is going to, the water's going to drain out good and not fill up your root cellar. But then the other way, which would be more applicable here, would be a spring house, which is what Patrick's dad had when they lived in North Carolina. That's how they kept food cold, was in their spring house, which a spring house is built. I know you guys have heard me talk about this before, but I still got to say it. There's always new people. And basically, it's just a little structure that's built right on the edge of a spring, or maybe practically right over a spring. And the water going through or around it, depending on how it's built, is how it would keep things cold or at least cool. And so that was one of the other ways that was used for refrigerating things like your dairy and your butter and your cheeses and your fruits and vegetables and meats. Their ninth point was fermentation. Of course, fermentation is a great way to preserve foods, and plus you're getting the good healthy probiotics. My only issue about fermentation being pushed so much is that it's really not for everyone. But I think everybody can find at least some type of fermentation that they can handle and that they like. Like Patrick doesn't like a lot of fermented foods. So most of the fermented foods I make get eaten by me, the kimchi and the fermented hard-boiled eggs. But I will ferment things that will get used in meals, like, fermented snow peas. Sometimes I'll ferment garlic and onions. And that way I do still store them in the fridge just to keep them from going too soft too soon. You can also add things like either grape leaves or horseradish leaves to prevent these things from softening up too fast. I still had a few, by the way, snow peas left that I'd fermented last year that I forgot about. And those did get mushy right there at the end, but they lasted for months, stayed crisp for months. So that's the one bad thing about fermentation is either it's not for everyone, or B, your stuff can still, even if you use horseradish leaves, because I had horseradish leaves in these, and grape leaves, those will really help. It's the tannins in there that help keep them crisp. However, they're still only going to last so long before they turn to complete mush. You might still be able to eat them, but they can get pretty mushy over time. So you're going to want to consume those within a certain period of time. That's not something you want to look at for long-term storage. So, but it is an excellent way to preserve food. I'm definitely going to say that. I just think people need to look past it being the only way to preserve food, especially if you're wanting to make sure you have plenty put up. It's like putting up eggs or putting up anything else. You never know from year to year if suddenly something's going to happen and you lose all your chickens to either disease or to, certain agencies that want to come in and kill your chickens, or to maybe just a bad year growing something. Like I looked again, I see no plums on my tree. I'm bummed. Last year was the first year we really got some plums on that tree, and I was so excited. But thankfully, I canned up a bunch. But now I'm wishing I would have canned up more instead of giving a bunch of them away. And that's what I mean. You want stuff that is going to last good for at least 2 or 3 years. Biblically speaking, when they had a sabbatical year with their garden, they were instructed to put up enough for 3 years. So you got to look at it that way. And fermentation is something you're going to want to work through fast, but still have ways to put up food for long term to last at least 2 to 3 years. And then hard cheese aging, that was number 10. And, there's the waxing of cheese. I think hard cheese aging isn't necessarily just waxing though. Because putting up hard, like Parmesan is considered a hard cheese. That's something that I don't even think you need to wax it. You really don't, because there's so little moisture in it in the first place. Hard cheese, we do both wax and brine sealing. Brine sealing, I hadn't heard of that one. Interesting. Waxing after all the whey is gone works to maintain moisture. Brine makes it very dry and hard cheese. Okay. Thank you, Tyler. Moving on, number 11 was keeping bees and having a raw honey storage. Like us personally, we're not to a point yet where we're keeping bees, so we'd like to someday, but we do put up a lot of raw honey because, of course, it never spoils. The worst that happens is it can crystallize, which there's nothing wrong with that. You can actually melt it down as long as if you want to keep it raw, you got to use a real low heat. Melt it down and get those crystals out if it matters. crystallized raw honey is still good honey. It's not spoiled. But the thing about raw honey is it's more than just a food source. It is also good for healing many things. It can be a good medicinal thing to have on hand. And though Manuka honey is like the most medicinal, it does not have to be Manuka honey, which I do have some on hand that's reserved only for that, but it's very expensive and I don't like the flavor of it. So I wouldn't want to just eat it anyway. So 2 reasons why it's reserved for only medicinal purposes, that one. Okay, this was another one I might have heard of. It sounds vaguely familiar, but if I had heard of it, I've completely forgotten about it. And that is a cold corner pantry. So this would be where, you build a pantry. It doesn't have to be shaped to the corner, but it would be a pantry that you would put in the corner of at least one wall needs to be an outside wall, and preferably 2. Both of the walls would have to be something that would lead to the outside, not interior walls. And then what they would do is you would have 2 vents. You would have one at the bottom and one at the top that would vent to the outside. So then in the winter, the cold air would come in from the bottom and then go out the top, and it would stay vented and the air would circulate, but it would also stay very cold in there. And then obviously in the summer months, that's not going to work as well because you're going to have hot air likely coming in. You would just block those off. You'd seal off those holes so you wouldn't have that hot air coming in. I suppose they would use something else to keep their food cold. But at least during the winter, it'd be a way you could have it's pretty much a non-electric indoor refrigerator. So then I'm sure you guys have heard of the thermal mass wall, having a thermal mass wall, which is passive solar. Number 14, a hand pump kitchen sink faucet. I know many of you, if not all of you, have seen those before, but that was very commonplace. This is definitely something you see a lot currently, and that is kerosene or propane run refrigerator. So they're very much like an electric refrigerator, but they run on propane or kerosene. We knew some people that were totally off grid. Usually those refrigerators aren't very big. So they had 2, a his and a hers. So she kept all her stuff, like her milk kefir and whatever she was fermenting in hers, and he kept his stuff in his. And so that worked out good for them. And they were propane refrigerators, and they loved them. They worked really, really good for them. I think, let me think about that for a minute. I think they were more than just propane. I mean, obviously, camp trailers come with those, but these are they're a little bigger than the kind you'd see in a typical camp trailer, and they're made for going in your house. And I think theirs was similar to the way a camp trailer one, which can switch over to the power to electric. And I think theirs did the same thing where they could switch over to their solar power, I believe. I don't remember for sure, but that could be a really good idea to have, especially if you have solar power. But you just have to keep in mind with anything like that, you're still, like in the event of a power outage, if that's what you're wanting for the event of a power outage, well, you're still going to have the propane on hand. You still have to have some sort of energy to run it. I mean, even wood stoves, you have to make sure you have a good supply of firewood. Okay, so that was number 15. Number 16, which is why I have the thumbnail, is herbal remedies from wild plants, such as yarrow, comfrey, plantain, because I'm going to keep saying it that way. I don't care what anyone says. Mullein, elderberry, and more. So obviously, did I say dandelion? I didn't even write dandelion down. But there's so many wild herbs out there. Or, whatever you would like to try to grow yourself, like me making sure I really wanted marshmallow. I really wanted arnica. It took me a few years with each. I got them. I've got more. I probably will have more than I ever need out of both of them. In fact, I keep having to dig up more marshmallow because it's like too much, but it's so beautiful in this time of year. Number 17, one that, of course, just like the herbal remedies I make from my own homegrown herbs, bone broth. And the bone broth can be made from any animal bones. So your chicken, your turkey, lamb, beef. I actually have a lamb bone broth. I don't know when all this lamb is gone, I'm going to be sad because the best tasting lamb I've ever had. Made another lamb roast and it had a bone in it. And I had cooked that all day in the slow cooker. And that I didn't have to keep cooking it. The broth I cooked it in, it was actually reserved brine that I'd put in there just to cook it in. Oh my goodness. It made an amazing bone broth. The next day, that night, I poured it all into a jar because I'm like, I have a feeling this is going to, because I wanted to cook the bones more and make a stronger bone broth. But then the next day when I went to pull it out, it was already absolutely solid in that whole jar. It's just solid gelatin in there. There's also soap making. And this was just using hardwood ash and fat. Well, hardwood ash is where we get lye from. Candle making from the beeswax from your bees. So remember, if you're keeping bees, you're getting honey and you're getting the beeswax. That beeswax can also be used in making your salves and your skin creams and whatnots. Another thing I'll keep saying is skin cream, because that's what I make it for, is to be a skin cream. And then I have my healing salve made very similarly, used differently. Hand churned butter. So obviously, if you have your own dairy animals, you can make your own butter. And butter churners come in all kinds of sizes. You can get little small ones that are just like a mason jar size, or you can even get a churning top to put on a mason jar. And then you can get the big barrel looking type with the handle. You're churning that heavy cream and turning it into butter. You can even just put heavy cream in a jar and shake it for a long time. And the whey will separate out of the butter or out of the fat, and then you'll have your butter left. And personally, and then if you have to have ghee, you can turn that into ghee. I've made ghee once. It was okay. Not enough for me to bother. I like real butter or whole butter with all the parts and pieces in there better than ghee. But I realize there's some people that must have ghee. A lot of these points are really, really obvious. And a lot of them I still think is so silly that they're called forbidden off-grid tricks. I mean, seriously, churning your own butter. But again, anymore, you can't put anything past certain governments, be they state or federal, or even city for that matter. So number 21, this one, really, who's going to forbid this? I don't know. It could happen. A treadle machine, which, of course, most of you know I have a treadle machine. I bought it back in 2013, brand new, because they do still make brand new treadle machines. I pronounce it genome. Apparently it's genome. I'll never remember to call it that because I'd never heard it said. I was just looking up brand new treadle machines because I couldn't find any good old classic ones, but I also wanted one that had zigzag stitch. That's an important stitch for me to have, and most of your old treadle machines don't have that stitch. And sure enough, right off the bat, I found one. Never heard of the brand name Janome before, so I pronounced it Genome. And I love that machine. It's been literally, I'm not kidding, I've been through a lot of sewing machines because I put so much wear and tear on them, especially when I was teaching dance and making all those costumes for our shows, that most of my machines would only last 1 to 2 years. And I just wear out all the gears, and it wasn't worth replacing the parts for the cost. It was better just to get a whole new machine. This one's outlasted all of them by far. It still works great, and it's been, 2013? So it's 13 years old? And the last one, number 22, this was another one I hadn't heard of before, but it's basically another form of a root cellar without actually being a cellar, and it's called a clamp. I had never heard this name before. Somebody raise your hand if you've heard of a clamp before. And basically, all it was is they would just dig a shallow pit, line it with straw. They'd put all their, especially root veggies. So again, carrots, potatoes, turnips, rutabagas, all that kind of stuff. And again, usually a lot of your different apples and squash can do well in places like this. And then they put another thick layer of straw over it, and then put, what's it at, like 6 to 8 inches of soil over the top? Did I write that down? Let me see if I wrote that down. Yeah, 6 to 8 inches of soil over the top of that. And it would keep everything in there cold throughout, and until they could work through it all. And so that's a lot simpler than putting in a whole root cellar. And that might be something that would be easier for some people to do. And I've seen people use like old broke down freezers, like chest freezers that they would bury in the ground. And some people would say, it's like a root cellar. Well, it is, but now that I've learned about a clamp, I think that would be more similar to a clamp. And the reason they use these freezers is because, well, the freezer is already insulated. So even if it doesn't run anymore, you can bury that in the ground. And then the lid's insulated, the sides are insulated, the bottom's insulated. And then you put all your stuff in there and then make it so that you can open and close the top. And also the one other step they would take is put a pipe. So you'd have to drill a hole in the side, put a pipe that would go in there and up to the outside so that it could stay vented and get airflow in there. See, and a freezer would keep out mice. Good point. I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for coming in. Take care and God bless.